All right. Well, I'm just going to give out a disclaimer here. Chris Mannix is out and the Sergio Mora is in. So put me in, coach. I've always wanted to do this. I know that I'm not that guy. I'm the Scottie Pippen, not the Michael Jordan. I don't hold the show down. I don't call and do all the hard stuff that Chris Mannix does. But for this show, since Chris Mannix is out on paternity leave, being Mr. Dad, I got to fill in. But this show is called The Fighter and the Writer. I'm the fighter. I need the writer. I had to reach out to someone I respect, someone who I actually read his writing from boxing scene, Eric Raskin. Eric, welcome to The Fighter and the Writer.
I am honored to be your fill-in writer on this episode, Sergio. It's great to talk to you here, and I don't know if the Jordan Pippen analogy is quite perfect though, because neither of them was the point guard, and I think that's what you're trying to be, right? You're like the BJ Armstrong on this. Would it be BJ Armstrong? I don't know. You're usually the color guy, and there's a blow-by-blow man. I'm excited to see your versatility here, to see how you can pull this off.
All right. Well, look, Chris Mannix is out, but look, credit to him. He's taking care of his father. He's being a present father, but he's being an absentee broadcast partner. So in comes you. So tonight we're going to get in on some good fights coming on this Saturday. We're going to be calling in Stockton, California. Of course, you won't be there. I don't think Chris Mannix will be there, but me and Corey Erdman will be there. Another writer I respect. Diego Pacheco taking on Kevin Saggio, two undefeated fighters. Tito Mercado, 17-0, 16 knockouts. Can he continue the power streak? He's taking on Antonio Moran. We're going to be getting into that. Joe Cordina and Gabriel Flores and on and on. But first of all, I want to talk about you, Eric, and that's why you're on the show. You're the writer here. You had a great 20-year anniversary. You know, you're really concentrating on every single participant and contender that really pulled me in. It really was nostalgic for me. It brought back a lot of memories. I'm sure it brought back a lot of memories to a lot of fans. What made you invest yourself so much, and not only in the show, but in every article?
So I guess there's a few layers to it. One is just selfishly, I have two articles I have to file every week for Boxing Scene. And so if I was able at the beginning of the year to identify a series I could do monthly throughout the year and take care of 12 of my 104 articles this year, that was part of the goal. Is that this way one article a month is spoken for if I'm doing a contender anniversary series. But honestly, I was just a fan of the show when it was on. I guess that was right at the end of when I was still an editor on staff at The Ring, and when I left and became a freelance boxing writer kind of in the middle of that run of the season. But I was just into the drama every week, into watching you guys, ended up writing about it for the magazine at the end of the series. I just have such fond memories of the show. I even did a full rewatch, I think on the 10th anniversary, and wrote an article for Grantland about it, where I reflected on a bunch of things that came back to me. But now it's been 20 years, and I just figured it was a great point to catch up with as many of the guys from the show as I could track down. And I started with you in January, and then it just was all downhill from there, you know.
Yeah, no, it started with me and it ended with Jesse Brinkley. We couldn't find where the hell Jesse Brinkley was golden mined up in Yerington, Nevada. We're trying to get a hold of him, but you got a hold of maybe, I would say, 12 out of the 16 contenders?
It's not quite that many, but actually it's funny. As right before we started recording this, I filed an article that'll run on Thursday, the last article in the series, where I did a little roundup of what I could find out about everyone that I didn't get to profile in the article series. So I ended up profiling 8 of the fighters, plus Jackie Callan and your friend Adam Bryles. So that comprised most of the series. But I have to read you this text that I got from your buddy Jesse Brinkley last night. I started playing phone tag with him in March, and I've continued playing phone tag all year long, right up to this week. And I got a text from him. I tried to call him yesterday, like prime time for me, thinking, all right, maybe I'll catch him right now. He didn't answer. Figured, all right, I'm moving on. Maybe I'll get him next year. So he sent me a text. It says, now is the best time to talk to me this time of the night. That was marked at 4:06 a.m. my time.
That sounds like
so,
Jesse.
Yeah.
No, listen, I get the craziest videos, the craziest text messages, but he would have been your best interview. It's a shame he couldn't get on to be part of this series. But I loved it. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for taking the time and writing those awesome articles that I'm sure will stand the test of time, just like the contender. But I appreciate you, my friend. But for now, let's talk about the fights going on this Saturday. We
Yeah.
got Diego Pacheco. I want to get your thoughts on Diego Pacheco because I think the world of him. We've been calling his fight since I believe his second or third pro fight, and he's just been getting better and better, evolving as a fighter. But what does a writer think about Diego Pacheco?
So I would say my feelings are a little more mixed than yours. He's been a little inconsistent to me. Clearly the talent is there, right? Great frame, still a young guy. What's he, 24 now? So, nice progression, a lot of skill, a lot of talent, but a little inconsistency. I mean, now listen, you can be boring and win a fight and be effective while being boring. That's exactly how I think anyone would describe his most recent fight with Trevor McCumbee. Better to be boring, stink it out this time, look good next time. I get all that, but that was such a dull fight. He seemed so uninspired, partially due to the matchup and the opponent and what he was bringing out of him. But it's a case where I think some of the shine came off him, even in a completely one-sided, maybe shutout victory over McCumbee. So it's one of those things where when Pacheco's looked great, I think of like the I'm
He's
50.
he's had back-to-back unanimous decisions, and when you're
Right.
on a knockout streak, and
What
once
was the knockout right before that? It was see this is me being
I think it was a Caceres, or maybe I forget who it was, but he's on back-to-back. He's on
Right.
back-to-back decisions, and then he had another decision before that. But they're good
Yeah.
fighters, undefeated fighters that aren't accustomed to going down. I'm
Right.
still impressed with him, but you're on the same boat as my partners at DAZN, Todd Grisham, Chris Mannix. They were really hard on him, and here's the thing where I have to back up the fighter because I need to see that evolution, that intelligence, that game plan on this level against a strong, determined guy that's not accustomed to losing. McCumbee gave a former champion in Caleb Plant all he can handle, hurt him, dropped him. Ultimately, Caleb Plant did what champions do, come back from adversity. Pacheco didn't have to come back from adversity, but he had to be careful not to get involved in any adversity. He was minding his shots. He wasn't keeping his head up. He wasn't engaging, trying to give T-Rex any chance to come in between the shots. He reminded me of Ricardo Mayorga, McCumbee. Have to be careful with guys like that. You can't exchange combinations with them. And personally, I saw what Pacheco was doing, and I brought out that to the telecast. But ultimately, writers like yourself and a lot of fans left with a bad taste in their mouth, saying that maybe Diego Pacheco's going in the wrong direction. I have to disagree. I just think against that opponent, he had to be careful.
And the thing is, we all have short memories, right? That's the last thing we saw. That's what's in my mind. One good fight, and we'll forget all about anything in the Trevor McCumbee fight that was a little disappointing to us. That's the way that these things tend to go. So that feels fresh in our mind now. Pacheco can erase that absolutely with the right kind of performance against Sergio, who is a completely different style than Trevor McCumbee, and maybe a perfectly made to order kind of style. I think you as a boxer who probably enjoyed sometimes having those guys right in front of you, I think that may be what Pacheco's looking at with Sergio.
I think he's going to shine against Kevin Sergio. Sergio has a beautiful record, undefeated, high knockout ratio. But he fights very small, 5'8". He's going to be at a huge disadvantage with Diego Pacheco. I think he's going to be like 8 inches in height. And Diego Pacheco has a basketball reach, 79 inches in reach. Sergio's going to be at the bad end of the punches on the outside at range, and on the inside, Diego Pacheco is just a mean fighter. Even at 6'4", he still digs down to the body, picks up fighters with uppercuts. He's almost a complete package. So against Sergio, who likes getting on the inside, but he has an opening with the elbows up, I just think there's going to be a home for uppercuts and body shots, and Pacheco has to shine. He knows that he needs to turn heads again. I think this is going to be a perfect style matchup that's tailor-made for Pacheco to shine.
It can be. Sergio, that style, that sort of wild, aggressive, compact sort of fighter, a pressure fighter really, but one who is a little bit unpredictable at times. That can be the kind of style that I found with a more technically proficient boxer like Pacheco. that can either be the perfect style that's going to bring out all the best in you, and he's right there to be hit and right there to be countered, and you look as good as you've ever looked knocking a guy like that out. Or sometimes, to go back to your Ricardo Mayorga analogy, not that Sergio is anywhere near as awkward as Mayorga, but sometimes those guys who put the pressure on you just end up being a complete pain in the ass nightmare. I don't know, again, you were boxer first. That was always sort of your instinct is, I want to use my skill, I want to counterpunch. Did you find that, like, those guys who were just, they couldn't compete with you skill-wise, but they could put pressure on you and get up in your grill, did you find that sometimes those guys were the exact last person you wanted to be in the ring with?
The way you beat perfection, and I'm not calling, I thought Vernon Forrest was a complete fighter, but imperfection is the way to beat perfection. Mayorga was imperfect. He was a strong puncher, dedicated puncher. He always came forward. He just fought from different angles. He was wild, but he also took a big shot. So in order to beat someone as great as Vernon Forrest, you had to be someone that was out of the ordinary. That was Mayorga. And then comes my style. I was unorthodox. I switched styles. I was very awkward as well. So that's what I gave a fighter like Vernon Forrest some issues when someone wasn't, what they were expected to see. I think if there's any chance that Sergio could do anything is that Pacheco gets surprised by the unorthodox ways, or how strong Sergio is, or if that power that he has is real, or did he just face the right opponents? A big red flag for me when I'm breaking down fights and I'm breaking down Sergio this week is, who did they fight? Who did they knock out? Where are they from? What is their amateur pedigree? And he's not passing all these tests. The record doesn't really stick out. It's not that bad, but it doesn't stick out. Most of his fights are in France. That's a huge red flag. France is not a boxing hotbed. There's not many great fighters that come out of France, even though, boxing does happen there, but that's a big one right there. So anytime you have that, I'm always going to question, okay, where else did they fight? So this is something that I that's the biggest red flag for me. The power, yeah, maybe the power can carry, but Pacheco has power too. So everything's going to be on the side of Diego Pacheco. I think it's going to be a one-punch knockout if Sergio plans on changing the fight or the trajectory of this fight.
Yeah, I had a similar thought to you in terms of his opposition. I was looking at it. I mean, the record looks great. 26-0, 23 KOs. On paper, that sounds great. I think that's probably what the odds makers are looking at when they're making this fight not as one-sided in the odds as I would have thought it would be, just looking at his record and figure undefeated guy, let's not make him too big of an underdog. But when you look at who Sergio has fought, there's Jack Cullen, 2021, knocked him out in the 6th round. That's a good win. A very faded Diego Chavez in 2024. I mean, when did he fight?
And Jack Cullen probably was at the end of his career as well.
Right. Not in his prime either, but Chavez, like, I remember he was probably in his prime when he fought Keith Thurman in like 15, 16, and he's fighting him in 2024. That was a KO4. Other than those two names, I didn't recognize a single other name on Sergio's record. So, yeah, it tells. Here's what I'm trying to figure out is, do you think that Pacheco's people were specifically looking for a fix his reputation, get well, make everyone forget the McCumbee fight style-wise, that they picked Sergio with the idea that his record's glossy, he's maybe not quite as good as the record, that do you think they sought out specifically this kind of opponent in this spot coming off the McCumbee fight?
Oh, absolutely. And I think they actually asked Matchroom to give a shiny record, but didn't really pick a fighter that's going to give him issues, because Pacheco, and this leads to my next question, I don't know why he is leaving his trainer, Jose Benavidez, the father of David Benavidez. They had a great relationship. They were striving together, but I always hate it when a fighter is on the championship level, making solid money, real good money, really filling out arenas, getting a fan base behind them, and then they leave their day one. They leave the guy that got them there. They just have no loyalty. That's a chink in the armor of the character of a fighter. And ultimately, it all comes down to character. So Diego Pacheco, why would he leave Jose Benavidez? I don't know if you know anything in the inside, on the outside, something that I don't know about, but it's always a red flag, a huge red flag, when a fighter at his peak, when he's not losing, he's not even getting close to losing or getting knocked out or beat up, leaves his trainer and his day one. What do you say?
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this subject before. That the loyalty card is big with you, and you like to see if you're going to leave your trainer, at least there should be a clear reason to do so. Could it be that they were so disappointed in the reaction they got to the McCumbee fight that he thought he needed to make a change despite winning almost every round? That doesn't quite add up. I don't have any inside information, but I read what's out there. I read the quotes. Both sides are being very civil and about it and claiming that they're parting on good terms, that Pacheco basically asked out of the agreement that they had signed, which apparently included a couple more fights that they were supposed to work together. And Benavidez Sr. said no problem, I'll release you. So there could be something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But if it's a reaction to one kind of disappointing fight, I don't think that makes sense for Pacheco. And as far as I know, we still don't even know who his new trainer is, unless you.
I think it's assistant. I think it's the assistant of Jose Benavidez, which is going to be mind blowing. From going from a venerated coach, someone that's actually doing it on the biggest level with his son and David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, and then going to an assistant. That just doesn't make sense for me. But two reasons that I think this is happening, and one of them is going to be that he looked bad, of course, that he's going in the wrong direction, the wrong trajectory in his career, but he still didn't lose. He still didn't, have a bad loss. So that can't be it. Second, and this is the one that I'm leaning towards, is money. Diego Pacheco is starting to make more money now. And the more money you make, the more it hurts to give 10% of your purse if that's what they agreed on. So money can be a big red flag. I mean, we've seen it happen with Gennady Golovkin, loyal with Abel Sanchez throughout this entire reign. But as soon as he made that big Canelo money, that $100 million contract, Abel Sanchez was out. And on and on and on. Once you see these big purses and these big fight deals get made, the trainer gets left in the wind because of that. So I don't know if it's just disappointment in the way their career is going or the money's getting in the way. But Diego Pacheco, I'm curious to see how he looks with an assistant in his corner giving him the instructions for this fight.
Well, I think your detective work kind of adds up there, because if he's going to an assistant, if Diego Pacheco if he was leaving Benavidez Sr. and suddenly he's popping up with Freddie Roach or something like that, then you'd know it's not about money, because Freddie Roach is going to want just as much, if not more, than Benavidez. So to go to an assistant, that kind of adds up. The math works out there that it may be a case of he's making the bigger purses now, wanted to give a smaller percentage to his trainer. Boy, not that I'm expecting him to lose to Kevin Sajo, but if he does, I mean, is the money you saved worth it to get rid of your trainer? Definitely not if he comes up with a defeat here.
And that's why I like to stick with my day one. I love the fact it all comes down to knowing your fighter. Know when your fighter has more. When your fighter needs to be held back. When your fighter is feeling the power in his opponent's punches. There's a look in his face. There's a chemistry that you just build over years and years of being, in the gym 6 days a week, of bleeding with them. I mean, your coach, your father, you're literally becoming a kid to a teenager and a young man and a man to a champion all in front of his eyes. You can't just leave that to somebody that's been in the corner saying, oh, well, here's some water, maybe pick your hands up. It doesn't work like that, but I wish Diego Pacheco a lot of luck. I'm going to find out for myself, see how he looks this Saturday. It's going to be a great card. I'm curious to see how Tito Mercado looks against Antonio Moran, who's a veteran, hardcore Mexican, coming off a big win. That's going to be a solid fight for Mercado. Of course, you have Joe Cordina. I'm a fan of his coming off his last fight. Win, lose, or draw, I want to watch Joe Cordina fighting Gabriel Flores. I think that's probably going to be the matchup of the night as far as skill-wise goes. And, of course, Skye Nicolson coming back against La Cobrita, Julian Avila. So a nice card here in Stockton. I hope that you can be there. If not, tune into DAZN. Eric Raskin. One more topic I want to touch on here. Another fight coming on this weekend. That's Badou Jack. Badou Jack, the rematch with Noel McKillian, in a fight that we called in Saudi Arabia. It wasn't an entertaining fight. But what do you expect with a 42-year-old Badu Jack? Still, hanging in there, getting paydays, but you can't hate on the resume. You can't hate the fact that he's a 3 division champion and he's still around here. Just like Eddie's Landi Lara, man. These guys refuse to go into the darkness and into retirement. But Michaelian, what did you think about that fight? Who did you think won, and how do you see this next fight coming along?
So full disclosure on that first fight, I was watching it, but I was not scoring it, and I don't I don't like to do the sort of the gee, I kind of felt like such and such won. If you're not scoring it carefully round by round, so I didn't really have an opinion with regard to who deserved to win the first fight. I did find it interesting. I keep bringing up the betting odds. I know you're a gambler too, so you appreciate.
No, that's the
stuff.
reason I've been following you a long time on Twitter. You're probably my third follow on Twitter. This was back in 2013. And the reason I started following you wasn't boxing, my friend. It was poker. That was my poker days in Commerce Casino. It was the poker knowledge and the fact that you wrote for a poker magazine. And then I realized you're a boxing writer as well. But you were one of my first follows on Twitter, believe it or not.
Well, as long as you brought it up, my book, The Moneymaker Effect, is still available wherever fine books are sold. But I do want to talk about some of your gambling habits, but we should probably focus on Jack and Michaelian first. But then if there's time, I'm happy to double back to your recent runs at the table games and whatever else you may be involved in. But yeah, the odds on this fight, I found it sort of interesting that even though Michaelian lost the first fight, he is a minus 160 favorite and Jack a plus 130 underdog. So my initial instinct is to say that that's just mostly based on the age. Not that much time is, not that Jack is much older now than he was the first time they fought, but I know Michaelian took it on kind of short notice the first time. Then again, Jack was coming off like a 2-year layoff the first time that they fought. So there's a couple of factors that could swing it either way. It's one of those things where I look at this fight as close enough to 50-50 that if you're giving me plus 130 on either guy, that kind of sounds like possible value there. It was sort of an interesting fight the first time in terms of how Michaelian badly outworked him through, like, I think maybe twice as many punches or so. But Jack was the guy landing the cleaner, more effective shots throughout the fight and got the nod. I can't remember how you guys scored it on the broadcast. Did you guys feel that Jack was the deserving winner? I can't remember.
No, I remember I was leaning towards McKillian, and
Okay.
I rewatched that fight, and I had mostly a draw. I mean, Jack did land the better punches, but he didn't throw enough of them. And I think McKillian was being a little bit more busy with the volume. He did land some clean-looking shots as well. It was a close fight, but I leaned it towards Noel McKillian. The second time around, I'm gonna probably lean towards him as well because Badu Jack's advantage, age is bound to catch up on you. You're not going to throw as many punches. You're more of the sly, old dog. You wait for the younger guy to make a mistake and then you pounce, but you don't lead the action unless they're leading the action. So I think this time around, McKillian's going to want to start a lot faster, impose his will, his youth, and his legs on Badu Jack. What you don't want to do is, let Badu get in the mix of things and fight like an older fighter, like Bernard Hopkins. He wouldn't throw a punch unless you're throwing a punch. He was just, he was imposing his will. He was imposing his name. I'm Bernard Hopkins. What are you going to do in front of a legend? And it's intimidating. Badu Jack's not a legend, and he's certainly not B-Hop, but he's been around a long time, and he has the accolades and the championships to back it up. So I think it's McKillian who's going to have to, do something to change the outcome come the rematch.
In bringing up B-Hop, you just brought up the only old guy from Philly who's tougher than me. I'm the second toughest old guy out of Philly these days. B-Hop's always got the edge on me. But Badu Jack, it's fascinating that he's still around, still competing at this level at 42, in part because he had that run in 2017 to 19 where he was, over a 5-fight span, he was 1-2-2. And at that point, he's in his mid to late 30s. You kind of figure the guy's winding down. And then he goes 7-0 since then. Maybe the last decision was disputed, but it's just one of those strange cases of a career that you figured was just about over, and then here he is several years later, still going relatively strong, still fighting for belts. I guess what I'm saying is that there's hope for you yet, Sergio.
No. I mean, I'm done, man.
I know. I'm good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear you say that because I said it kind of in jest. So
No, see, Badu Jack is not a boxer. He's not really a puncher either, but he's a flat-footed guy. He doesn't rely on his legs. So guys like him, guys like Lara depended on his legs earlier, but now he's more of a puncher. He's more exciting to watch because that's what happens to punchers. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what happens to boxers when they get old. You know, they can't move around like they used to when they're younger, so they start planting their punches more, and they end up being more exciting. They end up being in more exciting fights, just like Lara. You know, when he had the fight of the year against Hurd, that's how it is with these older fighters. And even me, you know, at the end of my career, I was more of an exciting fighter, getting stoppages because I couldn't move around as much. You know, my legs were just betraying me. So I think with Badu Jack, you know, as long as he picks his spots, you know, he picks his spots as a veteran to punch in the right time. Don't engage. Don't try to outspeed younger fighters, but you try to out technique them. You know, you wait for them to make the mistake. You dig to the body, and then you save your energy. You know, you play the old bull. You play the old bull all the way to the end and hope that you get the decision. And I think this time around, Mikhailian might get it.
yeah, I mean that's exactly how it played out the first time. Was Jack letting himself get outworked, but trying to pick his spots, and it did work out for him. Whether he can pull off the same thing twice, I don't know. But I just the plus money on the guy who won the first time did jump out at me as a little bit unusual. Usually, the guy who wins the first fight is favored to win the second fight, but I have a weird pet peeve associated with Badu Jack though. This is nothing important, totally trivial, but just one of those things that bugs me is I don't like it when a guy's nickname comes after his name. He's Badu Jack the Ripper.
The Ripper.
Yeah, I get it, Jack the Ripper. It makes sense and all, but that formatting, I don't know if it's setting off OCD in me or something, but your nickname should be either in front of your name or between your first name and last name, not at the end of your name. Nobody, Sergio Mora the Snake. Come on, that doesn't sound right.
I get what you're saying, but and it should be something different. The Ripper, you know, the worst boxing nickname. I know we're getting off subject here, but the worst boxing nickname for me is King. Everyone wants to be a damn king. King this, king that. I just get a unique nickname that stands the test of time, and no one's had it. Those are the ones that really get me. Or the babyface assassin, another one.
Right.
You know, these are the ones that are just played out. I don't want to hear it. What would be your nickname, by the way?
Ooh, that's a let's see. So this is not original because this someone else had this, but you know, the Hebrew Hammer could apply. Other than the hammer part, that part's probably not that accurate. You know, I don't know. I have to think about that a little bit. Let me get your take on sort of my favorite and least favorite nickname of all time at the same time. I love it and I hate it. Juan Lascano, the Hispanic causing panic. Good nickname or bad nickname?
You know what? It was unique. It was so unique, it had to be good. But personally, I didn't like it. But I'm like, that actually makes sense. It rolls off the tongue. And ultimately, everyone remembers it. So that's all that matters.
That's true.
Remember that nickname. So I'm fine with that. I'm going to end up bringing up a nickname for you. I'm just going to think about it while we're doing this.
Maybe something tying in my unique ability to fall asleep on the couch at any time of day watching any fight. That's my standout quality. So if you can build something around my narcolepsy, that's really the way to go, I think.
Well, listen, you may not be a fighter, but you're a hell of a writer. And you know what? I think we did a good job here taking over Mannix. I mean, Mannix can continue doing his baby duty. He can continue his paternity leave because we got the fighter and the writer figured out here. Raskin, what do you think?
Yeah, man. Listen, if I don't know if he's done having kids, but if not, if that factory's still open, there are future paternity fill-ins required. I'm happy to jump on anytime. And this is honestly an honor to fill in for Mannix and to talk to you, Sergio.
I appreciate your time, Eric. Thank you, and I'm sure you're going to come on next week because I know Mannix. He loves being a father, but I just think he's being lazy now. So. Get your stuff together, Chris Mannix, or me and Raskin are taking over. The fighter and the writer coming to a pod near you.